Hi, I'm Robert Crais. Welcome to the return of the Crew Reviews.
Well, hello there, Crew Reviews fans. It's been a while since we've chatted. We welcome
Mhm.
back to start this rebirth. We welcome back the great Robert Crais. His brilliant new novel, The Big Empty, featuring Elvis Cole and Joe Pike, is out now. So go out and get it.
Hmm.
Great to see you again, sir.
Raising
It's
a
great to
glass to
be
you,
here, man.
Bob.
Hey,
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, Bob.
cheers.
Hey, Bob, you want to give our audience a quick spoiler-free snapshot of what they can expect from this one?
Thrills, chills, and everything you want in a novel. Okay. Are we,
Accurate.
are we
Accurate.
done yet, guys? Oh, wait, no.
Good interview.
It's the 20th Elvis Cole novel. And uh, in it, a young woman, let me give you the launch. A young woman named Tracy Beller contacts Elvis, and he's never heard of her. But Tracy is an enormously popular influencer. She uh, she has 8.2 million followers across her socials, and she's famous for baking muffins. That's it. She's not famous for hanging out with celebrities or slipping out of a Ferrari with a split skirt and 9-inch high heels. She bakes muffins, and she's been baking muffins since she was a kid. And she started posting little 20 and 30-second videos when she was like 14, 15 years old. But there's something about Tracy. She's the kind of girl next door that's immediately likable. Everybody wants to be her best friend. You meet her, you like her. She's adorable. And this thing has exploded. She calls herself the baker next door. And now she has book deals, and she has brick and mortar stores selling muffins, and she does guest spots on the Today Show, and she's making a lot of money. But she's not happy. And she isn't happy because 10 years earlier, when Tracy was 13, uh, her dad, who was the guy who taught her to bake, by the way, he taught her to bake, and they were baking from before Tracy could even reach the counter. And he went to work one day. He was an air conditioning heating guy. He went to work one day and he never came home. So Tracy's mom called the cops, and missing persons got involved, and they looked for dad. And he had gone out to a little town in the western San Fernando Valley named Rancho, California, um, and just simply vanished. So what's normally the case when an adult male in America simply, with a family, simply vanishes, is that he just kept driving. And that's what the cops tell mom, the family. They say, look, it's we odds are it's a voluntary absence, meaning he just kept going. And we're sorry we can't find him. That's that. And 5 years later, mom needed to have dad declared dead. Um, and so she, to do that, she had to hire some, and did hire some first rate investigators. And they did a much more thorough job than the police. Uh, but at the end of their day, they came back and said the same thing: voluntary absence. He just vanished. Mom, she accepted that, angry about it, furious, but she accepted it. But Tracy never did, because he was the world's greatest father and she adored him. And now, 10 years after the fact, she has all this money she's making and whatnot. She's got plenty of cash to hire her own private detective, and that would be Elvis Cole. And that's the launch of the book and everything that comes after it.
And everything that comes after it
Hmm.
is unpredictable, surprising, wonderful. It's just fantastic. Um, well, Bob, I've said this before, but your novels all have a beating heart to them. I mean, there's genuine emotion woven into the pages. Of course, that flows from your characters and how you managed to make Elvis and Joe so authentic that, like most of your readers, I choose to believe they're really out there somewhere slaying dragons. Um, one day I hope to bump into him. Probably not Joe, but Elvis. But
Me too.
it doesn't stop with them. The supporting characters you create are just as fully realized, and even the bit players, nobody's given short shrift. A few of the characters in The Big Empty will stay with me for a while. Laurie Sanchez, for one, Tracy, Anya, and I don't know if it's Jaime or Jamie, but the talk
It's Jaime.
Jaime. Okay, that's what I figured. He's one I really dug as well. But when you're constructing a novel, do you generally begin with a character idea and develop outward from there, or is your process more plot driven and you sort of cast the characters to match the story?
It's never plot driven. It's always about the character. Uh, Character comes first. I mean, I learned that lesson uh, from my TV writing days when, I was very fortunate. I got to work on some really terrific shows, where, and I was working for really talented writer producers on those shows, and all of them told me the same thing. Maybe it was a TV thing in that era, but they all said everything's about the character. And this like Stephen Bochco and Tony Yurkovich on Hill Street Blues, Ed Waters on Miami Vice, and my first gig on Beretta. Um, I worked on Cagney and Lacey. It's all about the characters. Plot is secondary. I mean, you still want to tell a good story. You want a great plot with an interesting concept, of course, and you should have that. But without a real character that people can invest in, you got nothing because people won't stay with it. And there's been 20 Elvis Cole novels now. When I began, I certainly never thought there would be 20. I just didn't even conceive that there would be. And I certainly never thought that they would become as popular as as they became. Hell, I was just trying to write a book that made sense and didn't embarrass me. But it tended to take off, kind of like Tracy's video business. But I attribute that to the characters, and you made a comment, Sean, about you want to believe they're real. Um, I want to believe they're real too, and in the books they are real, and all the characters I try to make real. That's why I don't. There are no. At least my goal is never to have a stick figure character, and I don't care if it's a one scene character we never see again. Uh, there has to be something in the makeup of that character, my presentation of that character that makes them real. Because if they're real, they're relatable and interesting, and you're never broken out of the reality of the book. Once you go in, you're in until you're out. And if you're not out until the very last page, then I've created a successful story.
Yeah, you definitely did.
Mm.
Because we send messages back and forth like when we're reading stories, and that came through like when we were messaging, like stuck in this story, but in a good way. And so, but you were mentioning how you run it to write some characters that people relate to, tell a good story, and you've created the world's greatest detective, the world's greatest best friend. So The Big Empty, it's an Elvis Cole, a Joe Pike story, which I love, and me personally, we're all waiting for that moment when like Pike shows up. You could just feel it coming, that power, that ass kicking that's about to happen. As the author, do you find yourself shifting mindsets when you write Pike? Like, can you
Oh God,
feel it? Can you feel him, like the presence just taking over the page?
God, yeah. I mean, look, you have to be in two completely different uh, headsets to write those characters effectively. Uh, listen, Joe and Elvis love each other. They're best friends. In addition to being business partners, they are, but they are completely different, unique individuals. Um, Elvis is the primary character, I guess you would call it, because he's the main guy in the story, and his scenes are all from first person point of view. Joe, who is a much more internalized, um, a much more internalized. Um, I started to say self-protective. That's more to his origin than anything else, though. Just leave it as internalized. Man of few words. He doesn't say much. He doesn't need to say much or want to say much. He's more, Elvis is in the world he's around. Joe is almost like apart from it. He may be in the room with you, but he's not really in the room with you unless there's a specific point to it. And even then, he's not all the way in. There's an inner place in Joe that he is always within himself. So to write him and to write him effectively and honor that character, I have to be there too with him. I have to see the world as Joe sees it and feel the world as Joe sees it. This is often manifested in scenes where Joe is waiting. Joe is a great waiter. He you could describe him as enormously patient, but patient is really a word that applies only to people who are impatient. And Joe is not impatient. As a young combat Marine and a mercenary, if Joe has to wait 8 days to get the shot, he'll hunker down in a bush and he'll wait 8 days. And it's not boring to him. Time doesn't pass for him the way it passes for us. He's in this other place. So they're unique. That's one of the joys of writing them. I get to be with both of them, and I enjoy being with both of them. I enjoy being in Elvis's headspace. I enjoy being in Joe's headspace. I find them endlessly fascinating and interesting. And again, that's probably why I keep writing the books, because there's always something new I'm learning about them.
And you brought this up earlier. You this is book number 20.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure when you were writing book number 1, 20 seemed like 1,000 years away.
I never anticipated 20. I just wouldn't have,
Yeah. So the good news is that you can jump right in this book, as Sean alluded to, that you don't necessarily have to know the backgrounds in order to enjoy the story, because it's fully encapsulated on its own. For our newer audience here, this is an excellent way to start off, is going straight to book 20, and you can work your way back if you really want to. But what's your worry level that they don't know Pike or Cole's full background? Do you hope that maybe that will give them the curiosity to want to go back to those earlier books to maybe pick up on some nuances that weren't touched on in say, book 20?
Oh, sure. I write the books. Every time I write a book, I'm aware of two things. I have two types of readers. One is the reader who's read everything I've ever written. One is the reader who is picking up a Robert Crais book for the very first time. And so I write the books, like you were mentioning about The Big Empty. You don't have to have read any of the earlier books. Everything you need to know to fully appreciate this book is right there in this book. The way I introduce the characters, Elvis, Joe, the other characters, I call my family players, right? I have this group of characters, sometimes I go back to them in books, sometimes I don't. Like John Chen, the criminalist, Lou Poitras, Elvis's friend, Elvis's LAPD cop friend, Elvis's cat. So I have to write each character's first scene in a way that services both of my readers at the same time. I don't want to, okay, here's the cat. So now I'm going to describe the cat. Elvis has his pet cat, for those who don't know. So I'm going to describe the cat. Now that people have read me, oh crap, here he is introducing the cat. So, he's introduced the cat the same way 20 times. So I'll just skip that part and, move on. No, I'm going to give you something, a new spin on the cat, or a new kind of a scene with the cat that makes this reading as fresh as all the other readings. Ditto John Chen, Lou Poitras, or the rest. Ditto Elvis and Joe. That's just like a craft job, part of this that you have to respect when you're writing a series, because you want to treat your readers equitably. So I pay attention to that, and that's actually one of the most difficult parts of this job. Writing books are hard. Writing the fresh new stuff is hard, but going back and writing this new version of something you've written 19 versions of before is harder, because you really have to dig deep and get creative and come up with something. But I like to think I do anyway. People seem to like this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll disagree with one thing. I think you do have to really read all 20 books to really get the full journey of the cat, because I don't think you can just pick up one book and get the full picture.
Yeah, well, okay, you could be right, Sean.
Well, speaking of those early stories, the first several Elvis Cole novels were all first-person traditional private eye novel style. And then with L.A. Requiem, you kind of shattered the model and created an opus. It's still a detective novel, but equally a thriller, a procedural. We used to look through the lens of Elvis's perspective solely, and suddenly we had multiple points of view. Joe Pike's the wonderful Samantha Dolan character, omniscient third person, and so on. So my question is, what spurred that switch? And beyond what it did for your career, what did it do for you as a storyteller?
What spurred it was I began to feel constrained as a writer, married to a pure first person, everything Elvis's point of view story, in the way to tell these stories. And in large part, that comes from Joe. He really got me to thinking about this, because I knew, in the first couple of books that Joe was really, to me, just super interesting, and I had already kind of figured out his backstory and why Joe was the way Joe was, and I wanted to share that with the reader. I wanted to get in those moments and actually create them, to see for myself, to make it a real thing for myself, but also to share with my readers. I kind of figured they would dig it too. But I wasn't going to write this scene where, here's Elvis, who you could posit, okay, Elvis knows the backstory, so now I'm going to have Elvis tell Joe's story. Or maybe have a scene in dialogue where, Joe and Elvis are talking about it, and it comes up, and so Joe has to say something, which is just not in the character. Joe wouldn't talk about this stuff. He just wouldn't. So what I decided is that, well, I just have to break point of view. I'm going to have to do scenes from Joe's point of view, though, they wouldn't be first person, because just Joe's is not going to say that much. So that automatically they had to be third person. And once I accepted that I should take the chance and do that, then, well, why stop with Joe? Why not? If I'm going to have two two character threads. Elvis called Joe Pike. Why not other characters? And then why not do multiple intertwined storylines? And by the way, why then stay in the present? Why not do flashbacks? And you know what? It was scary at the time, but it was also very, very exciting because, for writers like an artist. So you could, the way I think of it is like I suddenly was giving myself more colors. Like if I was a painter now, rather than painting with just the 3 to 5 primary basic colors, suddenly I had this whole array of colors I could paint with, and the canvas suddenly was much, much larger. And that was a very freeing experience. And after L.A. Requiem was a very difficult book to write because I was exploring what was new territory for me. But when I finished, and when it turned out that the writing this book hadn't ended my career, I was just
Quite the contrary.
yeah, listen, I actually thought that at the time.
The home run, yeah.
I was so worried that that my readers wouldn't accept it, and that my publisher actually wouldn't accept it because it was so different from the prior Elvis Cole novels.
Yeah.
When I gave it to my agent, no lie, I told my agent Aaron, I said, listen, if they really hate it, I'll understand. I'll even give them the money back if they want to cancel a contract. I sincerely felt that. That's no BS. But what happened, and the book was embraced. And when I made peace with all those things, there was no looking back. I mean, since that time, I've again and again, all the books contain multi-character points of view and intertwined plots, and because it's like that simply because I enjoy telling stories that way, and I think again I think it yields a richer reading experience for the readers, and it's certainly a much richer experience for me as the writer.
That book is so pivotal and so good that I have multiple copies of it. Probably Sean and Mike do as well. Hard copy, soft cover, different covers. Like such a great book. So
that's why I like you, Chris.
Yeah.
Probably.
Chris, I urge you to have many copies of
I know.
my books.
It's
every year.
I do. Every year. I do my part to make sure your cats are fed. So you've been in the business a long time. You've won pretty much every award there's out there. But I have to ask, does Robert Crais still worry? Do you still get those moments of wondering if you've met expectation, if the story's gonna fall flat?
I do. You never know. I've and I maybe I don't consider this a character failing. Maybe I should. But when I'm writing these novels, I'm never sure how they're going to work out. Listen, none of my novels has ever written themselves. All those cliches. Yeah. The characters don't just wake up and take over and they just write the story for me. God bless you if that happens to other people, but it doesn't happen to me. Each one of these things is a lot of hard ass work. It's a grind.
Yeah.
There are more bad days than good days. There were with the first book, all the way through to The Big Empty. It is work. Now it's work that I love, and I wouldn't do anything else, but it's damn hard work. So even though I might be in a scene and I'll think, man, this is a really good scene. A scene is just one element in a string of scenes. And I'm never I'm never confident through the process that the book is going to be as good as I conceived it or want it to be. By the time I finish a manuscript, pretty much all I'm seeing are the potential failures within the book. And it isn't until much later that all that emotional garbage and turmoil dissipates, and I can appreciate a particular book for the fact that, yeah, it's good. Like this, you know what? Book 20, The Big Empty. Uh, uh, I am overwhelmed and actually surprised by the incredible response this book is getting. I mean, I knew it, when I finished it, I did think I had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, despite my seeing nothing but the many failures I see within it.
Wow.
But it goes out, pre-publication, and the pre-publication reviews begin to trickle in, and the early advanced reader comments begin to trickle in, and people are saying things like, this is his most powerful novel, this is his best novel, this is a masterpiece. And I'm thinking, wait, they used the M word? and there's more and more of that coming in. And I found at one point, myself, I'm looking at this stuff because my publisher sends this stuff to me, right? I mean, they get it first and they send it to me. And at one point, I'm reading these things, and I actually just felt myself well up, and I just got very emotional because I even at this late date, even after 20, all this, it just overwhelmed me that people were embracing this book the way they did, and seeing all the good in the book. And there's nothing more rewarding than that.
We've read all your other books, and it's not like a knock on any other books at all, because we love you as an author. We love your stories. We love the characters. But I personally, and I know the guys probably share the sentiment, it's amazing that this is some of your best work, because I would say that about your last book or the book before that. Like, you level up. You level up in the storytelling, the economy of the prose. Like, you do. But with all that praise and criticism that every author gets, but in particular the kind of nitpicking readers do with a series, maybe not in particular this book, has there ever been a specific critique that really bothered you, or has your grin grown thick enough that it doesn't affect you?
Yeah, you know what I mean. The knocks, for whatever reason, those are the ones that they can they can still get a harpoon in. And but after 20, it's not that I think my skin is thicker, though maybe it could be. It's that I trust that overall, look, there's going to be some asshole who's got to say some, criticism, like whatever they come up with. They'll come up with something, because there are people who just want to hate.
Yeah.
So on a larger level, no, it doesn't bother me, because I know that's just some asshole somewhere has got to hate. And and I can appreciate, early in my career wasn't so easy to do this. I can appreciate, you see all these people, the enormous, vast majority of people who send nothing but love. Yeah, you just write off an asshole and go, yeah, buddy, go ahead, live a good life.
It's like a poker player. You win all the tournaments or win these pots, but you always remember the bad beats for whatever reason.
Yeah,
drawn to it.
Sure. Sure.
You can't have a conversation with an author without talking about their influences, but because we're all influenced, from the get-go. And I know in the past you've mentioned people like Hammett, Raymond Chandler, Ross McDonald,
Sure.
some of the people you brought in the past. And I know, one of our favorites amongst us three guys, and truly probably one of the best authors out there, is Greg Hurwitz. And
Yeah.
you've got him into a couple of your stories now. What sort of impact has Greg had on you? And maybe he's expressed something that you've helped him with, in your careers.
Well, Greg and I are friends, and I've been reading his stuff since the beginning, and I've watched him develop. And I agree with you. I think he's one of the finest writers out there now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll tell you one of the big reasons I say that. Greg's work checks a lot of boxes. It's exciting. It's interesting. Evan Smoke's a great character, and Greg's created his own family of players around Evan that are great fun to watch. But purely on the base level of style and craft of writing, Greg has created his own thing. His voice is unique. Nobody else writing books out there sounds like Greg. He's got his own rhythm, his own energy that no one else has. And that identity, that he's got his own voice, and it's a singular voice, and it's fabulous. It's fabulous. And I think it's the best. I mean, Greg, I don't know how he describes himself. Greg's an artist.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Save those comments, Sean. I heard. No.
Oh no.
He's an intellect. He's an artist.
He's all that. But he's an artist, and that the level of his prose and the style of his prose is
amazing.
I just find amazing. I find it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you said something that I think applies to you as well. I really believe this. I believe you could give me 10 blank manuscript or 10 manuscripts with no titles, no authors, and I could pick out yours and Greg's with no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be easy.
There's a handful of others, but a lot of them read this. I mean, we when we were going full bore, we were reading 100 and 105 books a year, and a lot of them just bled together. Not yours, not Greg's. There's a handful that just stand out, and I that's a really well put. How you explain that?
Yeah, well, it's true, and hence Greg has cornered the market on Greg Hurwitz novels. If you want one, Greg's the guy to give it to you.
Yeah,
and once you have it and you're reading it, he transports you to a place and gives you an experience that no one else does.
Yeah.
I feel the same way, by the way, about Evan as I do about Joe and Elvis. I feel like I'm going to walk into a high rise one day and I'm going to pass them on the way to the elevator.
Just going to HOA.
The HOA.
Yeah.
Well, you might, but you won't notice them.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Bob, getting back to The Big Empty, there were some genuinely moving scenes in the novel, but for me, the most powerful ones revolve around the friendship between Cole and Pike, Elvis and Joe. I think anyone who knows you even just a little bit, I mean, I feel like we know you a little bit through this, can see how much you've imbued Elvis with your personality. So my question is, do you have a Joe Pike in your life, or is he a composite of several people?
I thought I was Joe.
Real good, Sean. Real good.
I'm sure there's you and Joe too, but
he's an
fantasy.
But you've already talked more than in this interview than Joe has in his entire life. So
Yeah, good point.
But I have an inner calm.
that's true.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you sit in a
it.
Jeep across from your best friend's house for like 8 hours? Watch him sleep.
oh
Well, there
man.
are some houses I could sit out in front of for 8 or 10 hours. Yeah, but
Yeah,
we
not
won't
my
go there.
neighborhood.
Yeah, not my neighborhood. Uh, listen, Joe. Joe is. I get Joe. I mean, I understand it. Uh, when I created these characters, I created Elvis first, and I did give Elvis a lot of my likes, dislikes, traits. I mean, when I created him, I was creating a detective I could relate to. Um, and so that's why I mean, I came up with real uh, reasons for
Mhm.
these things. I mean, they weren't just like ornaments on a Christmas tree, but the whole notion of like the Pinocchio clock and all the Disney stuff he keeps,
Yeah.
and the loud shirts. I mean, the Hawaiian shirts. I was wearing a lot of Hawaiian shirts then. Guess I still do.
Coffee mugs.
So I gave him that. I gave him the A-frame because when I first came to LA and I saw an A-frame house in the hills, which was the first time I'd seen an A-frame. I just thought it was like the coolest house that I'd ever seen. So my fantasy was I want to live one of those one day. Um, so when I was working out Elvis, I just sprinkled him with those things. Um, Now I wanted to do a buddy picture, a buddy combo, and it just makes good sense uh, if you're going to do that, that you pair you pair your buddies as opposites. So if Elvis was outgoing and personable and did all the talking, i.e., he was the first person narrator. I thought it'd be a good idea if Joe didn't say anything, and so and Joe always wears the same thing. I mean, Elvis wears loud Hawaiian shirts. Joe wears a gray sweatshirt with the sleeves cut off, and he never wears anything else. I mean, he has a couple of times for very specific reasons, but what's more plain? Go from loud Hawaiian shirt, plain gray sweatshirt. That's it. Um, Now, as I developed the character, of course, I wanted to justify again these things so they weren't just ornaments or glitter that you sprinkle on something as like here's the illusion of character.
Mhm.
There are real reasons and tragic reasons why Joe is the way he is, and there are real reasons why Elvis is the way he is, and that's all about making a deeper character, making a more realistic character. Otherwise, it's a clown act, which I didn't want to, which I hoped that I wasn't doing.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, because the characters, they continue to evolve, right? The relationship continues to evolve, and I'm curious, over time. I know you said that the stories don't write themselves. Like you have to put in that hard work. But did the characters ever throw you that curveball? Like you're just like, oh my gosh, this has to happen, obviously.
No,
Love it. No curveballs.
no. Listen,
He's locked in. He's locked in. He
I'm
knows.
a master of my own ship.
Yeah, right.
I I am not a pants writer. I figure everything out, or at least most everything, and I spend an enormous amount of time doing it. So, and it's again I it is sometimes an intellectual episode, an intellectual. Uh, there is an intellectual part of figuring everything out, right? Braining it out, but it's also more for me. I think it's an emotional process and procedure. I don't create or write these things sequentially. Uh, certainly in the beginning, things are coming from all different directions. It's like spherical, right? I mean, it could come in from just scenes that pop up and characters that pop up, and sometimes they make it into the story. Most times they don't. There's a lot of stuff I throw away, but eventually the story begins to take shape in a way that I understand and see, and that serves the purposes I want those things to serve. And then I begin to get linear uh, and write the thing. But I don't start actually writing narrative other than the occasional scene, which and I by the way, I'll write scenes in the beginning and have no idea where they will go or if they will actually even be in the finished book. And I figure that's me learning the book, right? It's me learning the book. So when I finally get going and actually write the thing, there are no characters demand that suddenly they do something else because I've already tested the whole thing out, at least in my head, and I know, I start here, I go there. There are these support points along the way, and surprises along the way, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty confident that I can at least get to the end. There could be changes, but they're going to be relatively minor changes. They won't be a big hard left. Like in this book in particular, there are a lot of big flip flops. Character changes, story changes. Things weren't what they seemed. People weren't what they seemed. But that's all by design. I mean, I had that stuff kind of figured out before I began writing, and I knew that I wanted to do a book like that and have those things in the book. So once I was going along, in the actual writing, those things didn't surprise me. They had already surprised me back in the beginning, but once I'm getting there, they're there.
Yeah. A lot of our audience is hopeful writers, up and coming writers, people working, towards their careers. And there's a lot of books out there about, how to write, don't head hop, don't info dump, don't do this, don't do that, write 1,000 words a day plus, all the typical things that everybody sees. Was there anything in your career that you learned that's maybe not in a lot of those books that was really critical or really important for you and kind of developing your career to where it is today?
No.
This guy's perfect for this show.
I love this guy. I love it. We're running short on time. He's just like, one word answer. No. All right, good. Let's move on.
4 hours to write that question.
Okay. No, 4 hours to write that question. Yeah. Not really. I'll actually, I'm not even sure how to answer that. When I wrote TV for a bunch of years, and I learned a lot of TV was like my writing school. I just learned a lot from having to write all the television I wrote, working for the people I worked for, and learning from them while I did. But there's a big difference between writing a 50-page teleplay for a drama series and then writing a 500-page manuscript for a novel. So when I made the transition, I had to teach myself how to write novels, and that took a couple of failed attempts that were in fact absolutely horrible, unpublishable disasters. And when I decided, okay, maybe you always wanted to have your own detective, so create your detective, and that became the Monkey's Raincoat. I went back to the way I'd done things in television, because this is the way you had to do things in television. And I don't know what they do now, but back then, right, you figure it all out. You write an outline. When the outline is where you want it to be, then you write the teleplay, and now you're done. You turn it in. So that's what I did with Monkey's Raincoat. Worked it all out in advance, outlined the thing, and kept going. I still do that. The outlines aren't as lengthy or as elaborate now, but I still do it. L.A. Requiem, the outline for that was like, I don't know, 76 single space pages.
Oh, crap.
I mean, it was enormous. Yeah.
It's like a Kyle Mills
Yeah.
35,000 word outline.
Is that what
Outline,
you,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm on board. I get that. I get that. So I don't know that there's any. I don't have any tricks. Which it'd be good if I had like some solid writerly advice. But the one thing that I know that a lot of people tend to forget, I at least I believe they do, and it's really simplistic, and that's to write what you love. A lot of people who are trying to write, for whatever their own personal reasons are, many of them seem not to be writing what they love, but they're writing what they think they should write for, market reasons or
Right.
this or that reason. And I guess that works for some people, but it couldn't work for me, and I suspect it probably wouldn't work for them. What makes you unique? We were talking about Greg and his voice. See, what makes you unique is if you put enough of yourself on a page and in your story, so that the story can only be yours. It's yours and no one else's. That seems to me the best chance anyone has to getting something sold. I mean, there are obvious things to observe, like the no info dump stuff, but you can get that from reading Publishers Weekly or, online stuff.
Authenticity.
Yeah. The book has to move, the scenes have to move. But that's all part of editing. Like, I mean, I to this day, I cut enormous amounts out of my first drafts because I still there are points in stories where I feel, well, I got to have this information in. So it's kind of like a Robert Crais micro info dump. I'll have a page and a half of some bullshit when really only needed one paragraph or maybe even just a single line. So
whole day of writing, poof, gone.
Yeah.
Out of here.
Oh man, happens to me all the time. Still does.
Brutal.
All day, a full day of writing. I've tossed scenes that have taken me 3 weeks to write because they were agony to write.
That's why I should have been tossed.
That's probably why, right?
Yeah. You just pull it, when your perspective, you pull back to that wide shot, and now you're seeing more of the book and more of the book. You realize that's only, hey, dude, get rid of it. It's just annoying. It's just garbage. You don't need it. I don't need it.
Sounded good at first, but it's garbage, and it's something that Chris Albanese would write, and he would think was great, but not Robert Crais.
That's funny.
Well, Bob, you have once again survived the main portion of the interview. Came through with flying colors, and this would be a good.
He looks older now. All of a sudden,
remind our audience that
my beard got longer.
It's out right now. Go pick it up. There's nothing empty about this book, by the way.
Gosh, no.
The title,
I know.
Full of great stuff. So, this is our lightning round. That's not a lightning round, just like we're the crew reviews, and we don't really review things.
We drink a lot. We talk a lot.
Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes
that part we do well.
I will start, and my 3 questions are all going to be themed about your background as a television writer.
All right.
We've already established, or at least I've established in my mind, that you are more Elvis than Joe. But are you more Cagney or Lacey?
Mary Beth Lacey.
Okay, there we go.
All right.
Things that you will not find in any other interview with Mr.
No.
Um,
And he stole some props from the show, by the way. He did. He took some
Yeah,
props.
you're wearing one now.
What my second question, what show that you wrote for has the best theme song?
Oh, Miami Vice, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I see.
Cool.
Yeah.
My vote would be Hill Street
Hill
Blues.
Street Blues. I was going to say Hill Street.
Yeah.
But I Miami Vice, yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
Well,
Can't
I'm
beat
more
that
an
one.
action, I'm more like an action guy.
That's true. That's true.
So, that Jan Hammer score, man,
Yeah.
I can still picture myself on a speedboat with a Mai Tai,
Ferrari Daytona cruising down
pretending
midnight.
I'm Don Johnson, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Shoulder pads on your
They're open.
jacket.
yeah.
By the you mentioned John Hammer. I grew up a Journey fan, and Neil Sean, the guitarist from Journey, and he did an album together. It's one of my favorite obscure albums. Sean,
That is some random thought, John, but pretty cool.
There you go.
Cool, but random.
Hey,
I don't even know if it's real, but I'll take it.
my last question.
Yeah.
Took more research, medical examiner details for Quincy or legal details for LA Law?
Oh, medical examiner details for Quincy. Klugman insisted that all that stuff be 100% accurate. So when I first signed on with the show as a story editor, I spent a lot of time down at the coroner's office in the morgue. And then after that, we had an actual criminalist on staff with us, forensic scientist on staff with us. I spent a lot of time with him, making sure that all of that stuff was accurate. I mean, it was really eye-opening, especially at the morgue when you were back in the rooms.
Oh yeah.
Where I spent a lot.
Peel faces off and drain the liquid out of eyeballs. Good stuff.
I tend to have a really hard time reading and seeing most of those things.
Fascinating.
They had
When they get it right, it's awesome.
At the coroner's office, they had a special water room, and the water room was for when they pulled bodies that had been in the water for a long period of time, they had to put them in a special place because they were kind of oozy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go in.
The smell. Oh gosh.
They lose about 35 to 40% of their volume in that process. Yeah.
Well, I don't remember those details. I just know that you don't want to eat a pastrami sandwich before you go in there.
Oh, God. Anytime I went into the Emmy's office, Vicks underneath your nose.
Right. Yeah.
We always told you to do that.
Oh, you pansy.
Yeah. Well, 100%. But that's fascinating. I'd be like right in there.
Yeah.
But right in there. But if I smelled that smell, I probably would have thrown up.
Right,
So,
yeah.
Chris, you were up with your very hard-hitting questions.
yes. So
Yeah.
Oh wait, each of you takes 3 shots.
Oh yeah, dude, you have no idea.
Oh,
But
man.
this is the best one.
I thought
This
it
is
was
the best.
out. Okay.
Best is for last. You
So
wait.
I posted a picture on social media that when I was reading your book, my cat, I have cats, was sitting on my lap, obviously, and I always get a kick out of when the cat shows up. So my questions are cat themed. So
Okay.
is Pike a cat lover, or does he just like Elvis's cat?
I think Pike's his cat lover.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so what name do you think the cat has for Elvis?
Human.
Hard hitting. I know.
Food bank.
Yeah.
Feed me.
It's a fucking cat. It doesn't know names.
All right.
Hey, that's a fair question. You wrote a novel that's from a perspective of a dog. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, he doesn't know names either. So
your fans love Elvis Cole's cat, and I've always wondered, have you ever been tempted to write a short story from that cat's perspective? Because I mean, that cat has witnessed some really cool things.
Yeah. No. But
I love it. Next.
but I have been tempted and will one day do this. And include a scene in the book from the cat's point of view.
See, that's what I want.
There you
I
go.
think that would be hilarious.
he's here to serve, Chris.
I know he is. That's why he's one of our favorite authors. He's like, listen, I'm just going to put this right in here for you.
Just for you.
And the
When you
cat,
see it, when that book comes along, Chris, when you read that scene and get there, think he did this for me.
I know. It's
We're
gonna be
getting a
great.
text when
I'm
he
gonna
reads
call
that.
my
That's
mom.
right.
I'll call my mom. Be like, listen, turn to this page. That my name's not in there, Mom, but it's for me. He wrote it for me.
Yeah.
This is the Chris Albanese cat scene right there.
Writing that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and spell that name right. All right, let's put some lightning back into this. All right, you and I are both of a certain age now. Maybe we'll remember these things. They're Victorian slang terms. I can't take credit for this. Our good friend L.A. Chandler had this on our social posting, so I stole it because I thought it was really cool. All right. So here's your first Victorian slang, and you must tell me what it means. The term is not up to dick.
So that means something?
Yes.
Not up to dick.
When you are not up to dick.
It means you're sick.
There you go. You are unwell. That's correct. All right, number 2. Tight as a boiled owl.
Means you're drunk.
Drunk. This guy.
What?
All right, here's the last one. Cupid's kettle drums.
What?
Cupid's kettle drums.
Cupid's kettle drums?
Yes.
Breasts?
This guy's 3 for 3. Congratulations.
That was the only one I got. That was the only one I got.
No.
That's impressive. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
3 for 3.
Words
Wow.
are my business.
Why he's a master.
I feel like we have to give him a prize of some sort.
Well, yeah. The prize is the show is ending.
He's like, finally.
Luckily
I'm done
for
with
you,
these
the
guys.
show is ending, so you can.
That's your prize. You get to
Congratulations.
leave now. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Crais, it's been another great conversation.
Great book.
Again, audience, buy this book. You will not regret it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read all 19 prior books, get them all. Get them all. But if you only have to buy one, man, that's impossible. We can't even say it.
Buy 'em
Don't
all.
say it.
Start with LA Requiem, I guess. Right. Bob, thanks very much for coming on. Best of luck with this, and we can't wait to read the next adventure.
Yeah. Here we go.
Cheers, brother.
All right. Cheers.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. As always, you're superb. And
That's the
drunk.
first time we've ever heard that.
Boys,
Mhm.
good to be back. And
Yeah.
couldn't have thought of a better guest to relaunch than Mr. Crais. As you guys, we talked about it the whole show, hell of a book, but that was a hell of a lot of fun hooking up with you guys again.
Yep.
Chatting some writing, chatting some reading.
Definitely. Definitely.
Mhm.
Look forward to a busy,
Mhm.
forward to a busy 2025.
Amen.
Right.
Don't
Here we
take my
go.
glass. Don't take this personally.
I can't see that anymore.